Morning Prime on the 8th of August 2023. My name is Dibala and I trust that you've slept easy, woken up well. It's another beautiful day that the good Lord has afforded us. Tuesday, Wednesday, and we have Siesta Fiesta coming your way every Tuesday, where get your prize on what is happening on the political landscape. Right now that we have the Azimio Kenya Kwanza talks or dialogues, if you may, shaping or shaking into place. And tomorrow will be a big day where there will be a commencement of that. But still, they are not rowing back as far as the stands are concerned. And that's what we're going to be looking at today with our panelist here, and thereafter of other issues as well, as far as matters policy and governance is concerned here in the country. And we shall also be hoping that you'll be drafting the show with us. You can tag along at KTN News, which is our Twitter handle, also at Dibalanair, which is my Twitter handle as well. But before we even get deeper with the show, let's see what the weather is looking like today. They always say, weather the weather. We will weather the weather, whatever the weather. Let's see what is the weather outlook. Right, and that's how it looks. But let's see what is fresh off the press this morning. We begin with the bold paper, The Standard. And this is what you're waking up to on the front page of The Standard this morning. Ruto maintains tough conditions ahead of talks. That is what we have headlining the front page. Grandstanding. President yesterday said he is ready for dialogue with the opposition, but he won't be blackmailed using violence, and that power sharing is off the table, as his henchmen also ruled out talks on cost of living. This is a story that you want to doggedly follow on page 13 of The Standard this morning. And we have a bite here from President William Ruto saying, quote unquote, I had our brothers in the opposition agree with us that they just like us. Are opposed to handshake now that they have declared so, they should go ahead and agree on ending violence. And through that, we shall agree on everything else. This is what the president mentioned. And also on the side, the hopes and fears of school leavers who shunned KUCCP's slots. Close to 600,000, it says here, close to 600,000 students who sat for KCSE last year did not opt for placement to universities or colleges. For some, the cost was prohibitive, but for others, it was out of ignorance. This is a story that you want to follow on page 8 of the Standard this morning. Uasin Gishu leaders in eye of storm over botched varsity funds. Uasin Gishu leaders in eye of storm over botched varsity funds. And we had the former governor saying it was not a scholarship. You can doggedly follow the story inside the Standard this morning. Thogota's shame, elders abandoned, abused in home. That is a story that is tucked away on page 3. Elders abandoned, abused in home. And Sociana should say feeds power to national grid. That is on the business pages of the Standard today. After City Romp, Arsenal ready for title chase. That is what we have on the front page of the Standard. Daily Nation up next. Forced NYS style drill for students. This is all about discipline. And it says in the 80s, students underwent pre-university national youth service training. Mandatory 3 months community service after senior school, as well as 9 months upon completing universities and college, will be required to graduate before securing employment if education reforms by a presidential task force are implemented. That is what is headlining the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. And if you underwent maybe this particular training way before in the 80s, where you had to have a hiatus of 2 years, and of course, you were in the NYS. That is what was before the 844 came into play. You can grab a copy of the Daily Nation. We shall be also looking at this as well. Ruto rule out power sharing ahead of crucial talks. That is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. President Ruto sustains the onslaught on the opposition, declaring his government will speedily conclude negotiations with rivals so long as power sharing is not on the table. National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah insists on talks open to public at Bomas of Kenya tomorrow. This is a story that you want to follow on page 4 of the Daily Nation this morning. And still on the front page of the Daily Nation, it says the law change to end messy divorces. A bill before the National Assembly proposes to amend the law to allow an estranged couple to separate by mutual consent. That is the story that you want to follow on the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. And radical plan for states to control matatu fares. That is what also is on the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. Radical plans for states to control matatu fares is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation. And you can follow that story on page 3 of the Daily Nation this morning. Court acts tough on high fuel tax. Courts act tough on high fuel tax is another story on the front page of the Daily Nation. I'll just run you by the headlines since you can't see it. I'll run you by the dailies much later once we have our connection sorted out. And Business Daily is holding this particular splash for you. Shilling hits 150 against US dollars. Shilling hits 150 against US dollar. That is this depressing news that we're waking up to this morning. The precipitous falling of the shilling, as it were, free falling and affecting exporters here in the country, and that is bound to also affect the cost of living as well. Official CBK rate stands at 142.98. Debt and import major casualties because of this development. Also, April Boss faces day in court over fuel taxes row. It's another story that you want to follow inside the Business Daily this morning. And also, transport says to control bus fares in proposed law. And puzzle of how 1,984 cartons of wine were consumed and empty bottles returned while inside Mombasa port. That is another story that you want to doggedly follow inside the Business Daily as well. I shall be showing you what we have on the front page of the Daily Monitor and also the New Times in Rwanda, and as well as the Citizen in Tanzania. And the Star here, Ruto moves to tighten grip on Mount Kenya is another story as well. But for now, let's buckle down to some business as we get the stories of the day on the way, where President William Ruto has set conditions for the dialogue to continue between him and Azimio. Let me just roll the auto cue for me. And that is the opposition leader, Raila Odinga. Ruto, who is on a development tour of the Mount Kenya region, has dismissed a handshake with the opposition leader and wants Odinga to commit and denounce protest. And as Jeff Kirui reports, the talks are set to begin on Wednesday this week, even as Raila Odinga threatens to rally his supporters back to the streets in September should the talks fail to bear fruit.
The political brinkmanship between President William Ruto and the opposition leader Raila Odinga continue to play out ahead of the talks. President William Ruto has set demands to his political nemesis Raila Odinga.
If we agree on those two, that there is no handshake and there is no violence, then we can proceed as a country. We can discuss the rest of the things.
We want Kimani Ichung'wa at your team. Before you start these talks, you make it a condition that Raila Odinga and his team must denounce violence as a way of sorting political issues in this country.
Sentiments that further cast uncertainty on the fate of the talks, as Raila Odinga says he will rally Kenyans back to the streets in September should the talks fail.
Sisi ni wengi kushinda watu yako. Kwa hivyo wewe pana tisha sisi, watu wetu wako tayari kuvumilia ili mazungumzo yaendelee. Lakini ukileta fitina, basi Wakenya wako tayari.
We are ready to engage with you on the basis of mutual respect, not with threats, not with blackmail. You must not blackmail us, that if we don't do what you want, that you will go back to the streets. And we want to tell you, even those streets, if you want to go back, nendeni, mutapambana na wenye munapatana nao huko.
The ruling coalition Kenya Kwanza is apprehensive about the dialogue with Raila Odinga. Ruto's openness to dialogue raising jitters, specifically in the Mount Kenya region. that partly necessitated the 5-day tour of the region to quell the fear.
Na hii watu nitawakalia ngumu. Mimi siwezi kukubali tena. Imetosha. Ama namna gani jameni? Tunaelewana? Unajua wamezoea tabia mbaya. Walilete kisirani kwa Moi wakapata kitu. Wakalete kisirani kwa Kibaki wakalete pata nusu mkate. Wakakuja wakalete kisirani kwa Uhuru wakapata handshake. Hapa hakuna handshake, hakuna nusu mkate, hakuna chochote.
Sisi hatujasema hata siku moja tunataka kuwa ndani ya serikali ya Ruto. Mambo yanataka handshake. Handshake na mkono ambayo iko chafu. Utashika mkono ambayo iko chafu. Sitaki kushika mkono ya Ruto ambayo ni chafu. Sitaki.
On Wednesday, the 10-member dialogue team is set to hold its first meeting at the Bomas of Kenya.
We have agreed on Wednesday, 11:30 a.m. we shall meet, but we want to meet in a public place like Bomas of Kenya, and we want cameras in that meeting so that you tell us and the people of Kenya want to hear what you are coming to transact in that room.
For Azimio la Umoja One Kenya, the issues to be discussed include the audit of the 2022 presidential polls, restructuring and reconstitution of the IEBC, measures to prevent interference with political parties, outstanding constitutional matters, and the high cost of living.
Wakileta zingine tutawasikiza kwa heshima, lakini mambo ya cost of living, Mheshimiwa Rais, hiyo umewaambia na tunawaambia ndio kazi wananchi wa Kenya walikuajiri uwafanyie.
Kenya Kwanza, on the other hand, has listed the reconstitution of IEBC, implementation of 2/3 gender rule, entrenchment of the Constituency Development Fund, establishment and entrenchment of the office of the Leader of Opposition, and the embedment of the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. Jeff Kirui, KTN News.
And President William Ruto's tour in Central Region entered day 3 yesterday in Nyeri County. The tour started on Saturday and will run through Wednesday, when he will open the Narumoro Level 4 Hospital. Clement Masombo reports on the president's entry.
President William Ruto continued with his Central Kenya development tour by launching and commissioning projects across Nyeri County. On Monday, the president launched the construction of Ishamara Rotune Road in Mukurweni constituency. The road will connect Nyeri and Murang'a counties.
Vile tumesema hizo barabara zote tutazitengeneza kwa sababu barabara ni ya muhimu. Inawasaidia kupeleka mazao yenu sokoni. Inatusaidia kwa mambo ya usafiri. Inatusaidia kujenga uchumi. Na hiyo ndio kazi ambayo tunataka tuondoe umaskini, tupeleke taifa letu la Kenya mbele.
Na ningependa kukuambia your visit here in Mukurweni has very serious historical significance. Kwa sababu hakuna rais mwingine ambaye amekalia mamlaka tangu wakati tulipata uhuru alikuja hapa kufanya maendeleo.
Kwamba hao watu wananyanyasa wakulima ya kahawa, ya chai, ya maziwa, rais amenisimamia hapo nyuma ningangane na hiyo watu.
Later on Monday, the president opened Othaya Water Supply Project before proceeding to Tetu constituency, where he opened the Kaigunji Water Project. The water project, whose cost is 826 million shillings, is expected to cover over 2,500 acres and benefit at least 5,000 residents of Tetu.
Kubaliana na sisi wote ya kwamba hii mambo ya maji ambayo tumekuja kufungua hapa leo, hii ni kionjo. Tumekubaliana na Waziri Alice, tunajenga dams ingine 100 Kenya ya kusukuma maji kila sehemu ya Kenya.
Nakushukuru sana kwa sababu sasa tukiunganisha maji ya kulima, ile fertilizer subsidies, umasikini na jaa hapa umeisha kabisa. Negwado ito.
Excellency, we will not let you down. Tuko na programs ambaye they cannot wait to be rolled out. Upande yangu wa maji, niko na all these dams that are called colonial dams. His Excellency has asked for an audit as we are planning to roll out the bigger work of the mega dams.
President Ruto's day 3 ended when he opened a multi-million bus park in Nyeri. another project that cost over 600 million shillings.
Wanajaribu kusema watu waende kufungua masava na nini. Kwani mwaka mmoja imepita na hujui kwamba rais wa Kenya ni William Samoei Ruto? Si hiyo ni wazimu? Si unafiki kabisa? Si ni ukora?
In the evening, the president had dinner with governors from the region at the Sagana State Lodge. On Tuesday, the head of state will hold a cabinet meeting at the State Lodge before holding another meeting with political leaders. His Central Kenya tour will climax on Wednesday when he will open the Narumoro Level 4 Hospital in Kieni constituency. Clement Masombo, KTN News.
Turning to the courts, the High Court in Nairobi has dealt Kenyans a major blow by dismissing fresh twin applications to suspend the housing levy. This is after the Law Society of Kenya and other petitioners challenged the enactment of the Finance Act 2023, terming it unlawful and unreasonable. LSK is opposing the introduction of the Affordable Housing Levy. At the same time, the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, EPRA, Director General Daniel Kipto, has been ordered to appear before court on August 10th for disobeying court orders on Finance Act 2023. He is accused of acting against a court order that temporarily suspended the implementation of the Finance Act 2023 when EPRA increased the VAT on fuel from 8% to 16% on June the 30th, 2023. William Lusige has more.
The request to suspend sections of the Finance Act on a petition filed by the Law Society of Kenya, Busia Senator Okiya Omtatah, and other petitioners challenging the enactment of the Finance Act 2023, terming it unlawful and unreasonable.
The Court of Appeal made an order, that the order made on 10th July 2023, that is the conservatory order, suspending the Finance Act 2023, and the order prohibiting implementation of the Finance Act 2023 be and is hereby lifted pending hearing and determination of the appeal.
In the case, LSK argued that the Section 84 of the Finance Act 2023 is vague and unconstitutional. LSK lawyer Eric Thiuri, Faith Odhiambo, and Noel Ngoloma argued that although Kenyans need to pay taxes, the Kenya Kwanza government illegally enacted the housing levy by bending legislation procedures. According to LSK, the government ought to have dropped the idea to finance affordable housing, as majority of Kenyans were opposed to the levy.
The court does grant a conservatory order against the implementation of Section 31B and 31C of the Employment Act as introduced by Section 84 of the Finance Act.
Justice David Majanja, Christine Meoli, and Lawrence Mugambi unanimously agreed they had no powers to entertain the application filed by the Law Society of Kenya and Kenya Human Rights Commission (KHRC), as the Court of Appeal had already issued an order unfreezing the Finance Act 2023.
On that basis, that we decline to give any interim orders because we believe those matters of conservatory orders were resolved by the Court of Appeal, and all the issues raised may still be canvassed in the parties' pleadings and submissions. Those are our orders.
The court also declined a twin application to have the Senate and National Assembly speakers grilled in court over their affidavits. Speaker Amason Kingi and Moses Masika Wetangula filed affidavits opposing the case filed by Busia Senator Okiya Omtatah and Eliud Matindi on the Finance Act. The two speakers claimed that the two houses had sought concurrence before the new law was debated in the lower house. However, Okiya argued that the speaker had lied, while Matindi stated that the parliament's committee had contradicted Wetangula's position.
It's a very sad day for this country that a senator can say the speaker and the speakers are cheating in a court of law, and it is swept under the carpet by a judge of the High Court. It's a very sad day, my lord. And it is something that we should not take lightly in this country. Otherwise, there's no point for rule of law.
The court also issued summons to Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority (EPRA) Chief Executive Officer Daniel Kipto to appear in court on September 13th for a hearing of a contempt application filed by Busia Senator Okiya Omtatah. Omtata, on his application, argued that the IPRA disobeyed the High Court Judge Mugure Thande orders by hiking the cost of petrol and diesel despite the court orders.
And then summons shall issue to Mr. Bargoria. Mr. Omtata, please follow up the summons for service, so that you can attend court, and then the parties send your pleadings and submissions in word format.
The court advised that all petitions have been consolidated ahead of 13th and 14th September, when all the petitions will be heard. Willie Lusigi, KTN News, Nairobi.
All right, and of course that will set up the tone for a conversation here with our panelists this morning who are already here. I'm holding court today with Senator Dan Manzo, who is a senator of Makueni, and also I'm holding court with also Danson Mongatana, who is the senator of Tana River, and we'll be joined by Owen Bai as well, who is the Deputy Majority Leader in National Assembly, just to welcome them this morning. Dan Manzo, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yes, fresh up and early, right? And also, we want to thank you, Danson Mongatana, for joining us today.
Yes,
it has been a busy weekend over in the coast.
Yes.
But you can apprise us on what is happening in Tana River. I can see there is Kenya pipeline that will be using the pipeline to transmit water, but people also are raising issues to do with the safety of that particular development. Maybe you can highlight if you are aware, of course, using this infrastructure.
No. I don't think that probably is not in Tana River.
It is in Tana River.
No.
You don't think it's in Tana River?
I don't think so. Because the mega water projects are not in our county. We have a serious issue which we have raised with the minister. And so the water situation there is not the way it should be. We are still using a lot of dam. The systems are not functional. In fact, we had the governor coming over before the Senate last week to explain why there's so much water shortages and stuff like that. But aside from that, Tana River is good.
I always miss out here. Actually, it's Taita Taveta. I don't know.
It's
in my mind.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not in Tana
It's Taita Taveta. It's Taita Taveta. So I normally miss out when I think I have a confirmation bias with Tana River.
No,
so when I see anything,
probably my mother comes from Taita Taveta. And maybe that is why. And I resemble the Taita people a lot more. But Tana River is good. We really thank God this time. The rains are still coming in. I think people have done their first harvest. So we are grateful to God. They are still holding on. A lot of people have gone in to do replanting. We are hoping that by December we'll have the second round of harvests. So we are grateful to God this time round. And a lot of good news. A number of our schools have done very well in the games, in the drama festival, and we were seeing them off this weekend. So things are okay.
Things
so
are okay.
Far. Yeah, we're grateful to God.
Let's hear from Dan Manzo. In fact, I saw a very interesting article over the weekend regarding David Milo. Yeah, you've read some of his books.
Yes, I do.
And so he had a function, and he was really saying that we should mainstream witchcraft. I don't know what is your sentiment in that regard. And he says, of course, witchcraft has its good side when it comes to containing the locusts and all. And I say, oh my, this is serious.
Locusts. Well, you know,
controlling locusts.
Witchcraft is a very old practice in the world. It's not only in Ukambani, but you remember over 3,000 years ago, Saul, when unable to get a prophet, having quarreled with Samuel when Samuel was alive, and now Samuel was dead, and he needed to talk to Samuel from the dead. So he went to a witch doctor, and they brought Samuel from the dead on a screen. And Samuel prophesied doom on him and said that the next day you'll have joined him in that other world. So witchcraft is a very, very old practice, and some places it happens. and satanic powers have been used to do bad things, but I've not heard of them doing good things. So I don't think witchcraft will control locusts. It is a world I would not encourage anyone to go into. You remember the folly snakes? They bite people, and recently, allegedly in Mwingi, somebody's hand turned into the hand of a hyena. You know, so that to take back, they'd beaten up somebody, and the hand turned into the hand of a hyena. So I hear such stories, and I believe, that is a practice which exists, but one has to make a choice whether you want to be a Christian or to believe in one God, or you want to believe in satanic powers. They do exist, and they perform miracles, as people can see.
Indeed.
Yes.
All right, and so aside from that, Hai Makueni is okay. I was just highlighting that on a lighter side. But seriously, when it comes from a person who is a consummate author and having also a public hearing, so to speak.
And he comes from Makueni.
He comes from Makueni.
That hearing was in Makueni.
That's why I wanted to ask you.
Yes, but there's freedom of conscience, freedom of religion. Yes, but I encourage the Makueni people and many Kenyans to believe in one God. Yes.
Right. I wonder if Owen Baya read some of David Milo's book.
Yeah.
And they're very spooky. I think my mom had those. One of them I can remember was Kadosa.
Yes. When I was in school, I read a lot of David Milo's books, and I think he's one of the Kenyans who has written the largest volume of a book. One of his books, I can't remember its name, but it is one of the, I think it runs into almost 5,000 pages, one of the biggest books. But David Milo is a very interesting character in his writings. He glorifies sex and things like that in a lot of his books, but again also glorifies a lot of witchcraft. And I don't know, the Kambas must have learnt witchcraft from a man called Kajiwe from my place. And Kabwere. Yes, people who brought witchcraft to Cumberland. And David Milo seems to have embraced it. And he writes a very interesting stories about witchcraft. And I think, I don't know, but people, probably if Kajiwe and Kabwere was around, he would have determined whether David Milo himself is a witch doctor or not. We cannot say that, but he glorifies it. And he has written a book on African tradition, customs, something like that. And in that book, you can see where he tilts towards to in terms of religion, and you can see he's more traditional, but also anchors himself more on the witchcraft side. So I don't know, I haven't probably, my brother will tell us more about David Milo, but he's a very, very interesting character.
Yeah, and talking of course of his heydays, you may go back to the NYS style that now is being brought back to schools, not really schools, but that transitioning moment from high school to the university. Do you think we should go back there? Is it, have we passed that particular junction, so to speak, in life, that we need drilling that is NYS sort of like? Danson Mungatana.
Now,
before you joined campus, did you had this particular drilling yourself?
No, I didn't, and but my brother, who was ahead of me, did. And when they came back home, they told us horrifying stories about waking up at 3 a.m., about people jumping on your bed, and
it's sort of
stuff. They were horrible stories. And so I made up my mind that I will never go to NYS because what was painted to me was, brutality, and the history of it was that.
But did you have a choice?
No,
it was mandatory, wasn't it?
No, it was supposed to be mandatory, but in our year, President Moi suspended it because of budgetary constraints. But the history was that university students they had the government, and they had been, there was this idea that people should be more disciplined and whatever. I think for me, I had decided I would not go. And in fact, I had decided, because when you have good medical explanation, you wouldn't have to go.
Okay.
And I had decided I wouldn't go. And I decided I was going to fall sick and get myself excused because of what we were told about. So if NYS kind of thing is to be brought back, it will face a lot of resistance, and we'll need to have very strong justification for, telling people you need to go and run and do what and what. And maybe all I want to do is to study agriculture. Yeah, I don't even want to meet with policemen anywhere. All I want to do is sell meat. So why do you want me to go and run around in whatever? But
that's not the essence. The essence is to inculcate discipline.
But if
inculcate structure around your life.
Look, there are people who I don't know if you've interacted, but there was a time my wife was very, she was running a restaurant at that time. And so we would wake up very early at about 3 a.m. and be in Wakulima market by about 4 a.m. to collect stuff and what. So in terms of discipline, the people who are in Wakulima market are more disciplined than a lot of people, even a lot of those people who have gone to NYS. Why? Because the kind of business you do disciplines you to that kind of lifestyle. So people wake up at 4 and it's normal, and the people who do Mira business also, they have a certain way of doing their things. People who do animal trade, wale wanauza ng'ombe na whatever, mbuzi na whatever, they have a certain way of doing their things. So I don't think I need to be taken to a government facility to be taught discipline. If my parents didn't teach me discipline, the world will teach me discipline, or the trade in which I engage in will force me to be in that kind of discipline. I don't think we should head in that direction. It will face a lot of resistance, and I personally think it's unnecessary.
It's unnecessary. Yeah. All right, Dan Mazo from Starehe.
Youth service before people went to university. It is something done in some countries, not all countries. I know in Israel, everybody has some paramilitary training and can be called upon in time to defend the nation. In Kenya, with our situation, our financial situation, an economy which is not doing very well, and financial constraints, I think it's still not appropriate to send students through that training before they go to university. There are many other ways, you can get that sort of training and fitness, through sports, through schools. Already a lot of schools teach a lot of discipline, just like there was a lot of discipline at Starehe Boys Center, and there still is. When we went to school, from the days of PD Shaw to the days of Griffin to today. So I believe from the schools you can be able to get enough discipline. And again also, charity begins at home. So every family, I'm sure, has a structure to make sure that there is sufficient discipline, in their families. And that's why the Waswahili say, and luckily we have two Waswahilis here. Asiyefunzwa na mamaye hufunzwa na ulimwengu. So charity begins at home, discipline begins at home, and then it flows to the rest of the world. And if you are in a profession like accounting profession, the legal profession, there are professional bodies which make sure that you are disciplined in your career. Yes.
So are you giving it a thumbs up or?
No, I'll really discourage.
At this time?
We are talking of cost of living.
Cost of living, yeah. This will be...
And this has not been put in the budget. So how are you going to implement something which is not in the budget?
Well, this is just a suggestion or a proposal from the Presidential Working Party with a report. Right? So it's up to you now to decide whether it should be inculcated as or not. What about Owen Bayer?
I think there's a general misunderstanding of what this program is, and I wish my colleagues had taken time to read the report about what this training is like. It's different from the one that was done in the early 80s. It's much different. The NYS then, that the pre-university, it used to be called the pre-university NYS program, was more of military training, more military. And I think Moi, that time, brought it down on the basis that people had become more militarized. And if you remember the 1982 coup, a lot of the students who had gone through NYS were actually rounded up and jailed because they thought that it had been used to inculcate a militarization culture within students. And at that particular time, I remember one of my uncles, who is now a professor at the University of Nairobi, joined NYS. And when he came home, you could see a change, a change in him, in approach of things. He was more of a mjeshi man at home than a student waiting to join university. And I remember he had friends who were also in the same program in the village, and they would wear their military fatigue and walk around the town. And you could see they had it did achieve the objective for which it was meant to achieve, the pre-university NYS. And that's why I think apart from budgetary constraints, I think the former president, or the late president then, pulled it down because it inculcated in a culture of militarization within the people. But Dibal, if you look at Greece in the early years, why Greece developed the way it did in the early years and created children who are more disciplined, focused on work, and who there's more cohesion within the community, is because of their program. If you studied education like I did, you understand the history, the pedagogical development of a child within the Greek society, and therefore you'd see why they had a lot of philosophers, there are a lot of thinkers, there are a lot of people who are focused on developing new ideas in education, because the minds of the children were engaged from very early. And why they loved society and communal kind of living, and they loved each other. Greece developed on that aspect. So you learn that from, as an educationist, you know the value of community work or community service, and how it brings people together, integrates them as one nation, and therefore it is not a bad thing. And now fast forward to this new program. This new program is basically not like what it was. One of the things is the community service will be done in the community of the child. So these children will not be taken away to a military base. They will not be taken to a camp. They will be coming from their homes, join the rest of the other kids, do community service. There is a road that needs to be done. They will go and help build that road. There is a dispensary that requires people staff to assist in the dispensary. They'll be taken there. There'll be a school where...
What will be the role of National Youth Service, which is still here? Isn't that duplication of work or duplication of functions?
The National Youth Service only works in certain areas only. I haven't seen National Youth Service in my village, but I will see the young people in the community service in my village. It is more like what you have this. Is it Kazi kwa Vijana? This program that was there. It is more like that, but it is supervised by Ministry of Education officials and the chiefs and provincial administration. They will supervise it within the village, so that children, when they're out of school, they don't just hang around. They're engaged. They are taught certain skills of life. Because if you read the report that is there, it will be supervised by the sub-county district, the sub-county education officers within the sub-counties.
Thank you.
And the chiefs. So before we condemn it, I think it's very important that we read the report and the objectives. And countries like Korea, countries like Finland, countries like several countries in the world still help before you transit from one level of education to the next. During that gap, you go out there love your village, love your community, interact with other people who have come from other schools, so that you can share ideas. To me, it is not a bad idea.
Yes, I think it's the most ridiculous report there can ever be. You know, as I told you when we were in Cerebral Center, we used to do community service during the school holidays at the hospitals, parliament, and many public places. Voluntary community service, and there will be some report on the things you are doing. And in fact, that encouraged a lot of my classmates to become doctors, surgeons, and people like that, because they got exposed to hospitals and doctors when they were in secondary school. But you can't do it after Form 4. When somebody is already 18, they have an ID card, they're looking for a job, they need to work, then it's so mixed up, you know. You instead of giving, you know, they should work for pay at that particular age. You cannot force them to do government work at no pay, and even to work under the chief, you know, the district, you know, system. I think it's most ridiculous. Probably if it is done more through the counties, or you expose your programs to expose students, similar like the ones done by Cerebral Center when they are in high school, maybe one of their holidays.
You see,
it may make sense. But this,
he has not read the
this
report.
is really.
He is hinging it on the wrong premise, because after grade 12. That's when the child, before he knows where he wants to go to college, he knows what he wants to do, that's when they go into community service. And then there are two within the cycle. So this child, when he's finished grade 12, you know, he can go do community service. Today, Starehe Boys Center, up to today, come to Parliament as part of community service. And we see them there. And that is why Starehe Boys turn out their children the way they do. Because they give them the opportunity, as given by Griffith. He cannot be talking ill of a community service for which he participated when he was young, and he is now an elected senator and has had a good track record because he benefited from community service. Today he wants to tell other Kenyans that they should not go for children, they should not go for community service. That is ridiculous. Actually, what he's saying is more ridiculous than what is ridiculous in the report.
Right. Okay.
He is a beneficiary of community service.
Yeah,
I see those boys at Parliament, the Starehe boys, and you see them when they interact with us. They interact when they leave. They have an age over other children. You know, you see them at Nairobi Hospital. When you go there, you see Starehe boys, kids. You see them in the ministry, and they actually wear their uniform to identify who they are. And I like seeing them there. I wish my kids from my village would be here also. They would have an edge over others. Community service is good, my brother.
Thank you. All right.
I'm not saying community service is bad, but you must frame it correctly. I'm saying the edge you should do community service at high school, but not when you are already proceeding to university.
All right. We want to take a short break right now. When we circle back, of course, we look at the soapbox and the museum. We're harking back to history, just to also dig into our archives and showcase some of the stories that were done, or just to give you, or to trigger your memory where you were at that particular time. We take a short break right now. You're watching Siasa Fiesta. Don't go away. Much more.